To understand the magnitude of what was lost, we must first breathe in the air of the city that once was. Imagine stepping onto the stone quays of the Tagus River in early 1750. The air here does not smell like the rest of Europe. It is heavy, humid, and thick with the scent of unwashed bodies, drying fish, and the intoxicating, spicy dust of cinnamon and pepper. This is Lisbon, the fourth largest city on the continent, a sprawling metropolis of 200,000 souls that rivals London and Paris in size and eclipses them in sheer, tangible wealth. You are standing at the golden throat of Europe, the single point where the vast riches of the Atlantic enter the Old World. Before you lies a harbor so crowded with vessels that locals joke you could cross the wide river by jumping from deck to deck without ever wetting your boots. This forest of masts is the visual proof of the Portuguese global machine, a network built on 5 pillars of absolute supremacy that has turned this small kingdom into the world's primary creditor. Ships dock here daily, their hulls groaning under the weight of white gold porcelain from Macau and aromatic cloves from the Spice Islands. But the true engine of this opulence is the Brazilian boom. Since the discovery of massive deposits in Minas Gerais in 1695, a river of gold and diamonds has flowed ceaselessly across the ocean, funding the construction of more than 40 churches and 90 convents, earning Lisbon the title of the New Rome. Dominating the riverfront is the Paço da Ribeira, the royal palace, a symbol of this excessive power. It is a treasure house containing the administrative brain of an empire stretching from South America to Indonesia, holding within its walls the roteiros, secret nautical maps that serve as the classified nuclear codes of the 18th century. Yet, walk just a few steps away from the marble floors of King João V's palace, and the golden illusion cracks. Lisbon is a city of medieval contradictions, a labyrinth of narrow, sun-starved alleys in the Alfama district, where the stunning wealth floats atop a sea of filth. There is no modern sewage system here. Waste is thrown from windows with a cry of "agua vai" to wash down the steep hills into the very river that brings the gold. It is a place of extreme piety and extreme dread, where the bells of the Jerónimos monastery ring out over the cries of the fishwives and the chanting of the auto da fe. In the Rocio Square, the Inquisition still burns heretics in grand spectacles of public penance, a dark medieval shadow lingering in a city that prides itself on being the beacon of global commerce. This is Lisbon at its peak, pious, filthy, unimaginably rich, and utterly unprepared for the fact that the ground beneath it is straining to hold the weight of its own history. The morning of November 1st, 1755 dawned bright and clear. It was All Saints' Day, a holy date of supreme importance in the Catholic calendar, meaning the narrow streets were mostly empty, while the grand cathedrals were packed to suffocating capacity. The entire population was crowded beneath the stone vaults of the Church of São Roque, the Patriarchal Cathedral, and the Carmo Convent, surrounded by thousands of lit candles placed on altars to honor the saints. At 40 minutes past 9, a low rumble began, sounding to some like the rattling of heavy coaches, but quickly escalating into a roar from the depths of the earth. The ground did not just shake, it convulsed. For nearly 6 terrifying minutes, an eternity in seismic terms, the city was violently thrashed by an earthquake estimated today to be magnitude 9.0. The massive limestone roofs of the churches, unsupported during the sway, collapsed instantly, crushing the praying congregations in a single stroke. In the Alfama and the Baixa, the medieval tenements leaned and crumbled into the narrow alleys, trapping thousands in tombs of masonry and timber. A choking dust rose up, turning the bright morning into a twilight of gray grit. Those who miraculously survived the initial collapse clawed their way out of the rubble and did what instinct told them to do. They ran toward the open space of the river. the docks of the Ribeira were crowded with survivors seeking safety away from the falling buildings, their eyes fixed on the Tagus. But nature had not finished its work. The survivors watched in confusion as the water in the river began to retreat, sucked backward toward the ocean, revealing shipwrecks and lost cargo on the muddy riverbed. Minutes later, the Atlantic returned. A massive tsunami, a wall of water over 20 feet high, raced up the river and slammed into the lower city. It smashed the ships in the harbor, obliterated the royal palace's lower foundations, and swept the people on the docks into the churning current. The destruction was biblical in scope. The king's library, with its 70,000 volumes, the priceless paintings by Titian and Rubens, and the secret archives of the Age of Discovery were soaked and scattered. Yet the cruelest twist was still to come. The thousands of candles lit for the holy day had fallen into the timber ruins of the houses and churches. Fanned by the winds, these small flames merged into a singular, ravenous firestorm that raged unchecked for 5 days. There was no water to fight it, as the cisterns were shattered and the river was choked with debris. Lisbon was not merely damaged, it was erased. Of its 200,000 citizens, perhaps 60,000 perished. The operational brain of the world's first global empire, along with 85% of its buildings, was reduced to ash and mud in less than a week. The silence that followed the firestorm was not just the silence of death, but of shock that resonated across the entire Western world. The destruction of Lisbon shattered the optimism of the era. Philosophers like Voltaire and Rousseau looked at the ashes of the faithful city destroyed on a holy day and engaged in a fierce intellectual battle about the nature of God and the indifference of the natural world, effectively sparking the darker, more skeptical turn of the Enlightenment. In Portugal, the psychological toll was immediate. King José I survived only because he had been attending Mass outside the city center, but the trauma left him with a debilitating claustrophobia. He would never sleep within stone walls again, spending the rest of his reign in a complex of luxurious tents in the hills. The task of resurrection fell to his prime minister, Sebastião José de Carvalho e Melo, the future Marquês de Pombal. Pombal was a man of cold, ruthless pragmatism. Legend holds that when asked what must be done, he replied with a sentence that became the motto of the recovery: "Bury the dead and feed the living." He seized the catastrophe as an opportunity to exorcise the medieval chaos of the old city. Ignoring the protests of the clergy and the nobility who wanted to rebuild their palaces on their ancestral plots, Pombal ordered the ruins leveled. He envisioned a new Lisbon, not shaped by the organic, winding paths of goats and carts, but by the rational grid of the Age of Reason. He enlisted military engineers to design the Baixa Pombalina, a district of wide, straight avenues that prioritized sanitation, commerce, and light. Crucially, he was determined that history would not repeat itself. He introduced the Gaiola Pombalina, the Pombaline cage, a flexible wooden framework hidden inside the masonry walls, designed to sway with seismic waves rather than break. It was one of the first examples of earthquake-resistant engineering in history. To ensure they worked, he had soldiers march rhythmically around scale models to simulate vibration. He standardized construction, mass-producing the now iconic ceramic tiles to speed up the process and fireproof the facades. The result of this iron will is the Lisbon we see today. The chaotic, opulent Ribeira Palace was not rebuilt. In its place stands the Praça do Comércio, a vast, open public square, symbolizing the shift from royal absolutism to commercial pragmatism. The king's statue stands in the center, crushing snakes beneath his horse, a metaphor for order triumphing over the chaos of nature. Walking through the Baixa today, beneath the symmetry of the arches and the yellow trams, you are walking through a monument to resilience. The city retained its saudade, its deep, soulful longing, but it shed its medieval skin to become the first modern city of the Enlightenment. Lisbon proved that while a city can be broken by the earth, it can be remade by the human mind, stronger, safer, and enduring.